Amelia, be safe. Give my regards to Dr. Mann.
I will, Dad.
It looks good for your trajectory. We've calculated 2 years to Saturn.
It's a lot of Dramamine. Look after my family, will you please, sir?
We'll be waiting for you when you get back. Little older, little wiser, but happy to see you. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end, no dark is right, because their words had fought no lightning they. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
All right. I thought that was a great way to start our discussion of Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. I just want to let you know that I do have the TP cast next to me. When you're giving your presentations, you should have your TP cast next to you, but you don't have to be sharing it on your screen. So I'm just going to stop the sharing for a second, just so that you know that you should have the TP cast nearby, but you don't have to necessarily be sharing it directly on your screen. What I am going to be sharing is the poem itself, so that as I'm discussing the poem, you can see the poem as I am discussing it with you. Am I sharing the rights? Can you see that? Let me stop the screen 1 second. I was not sharing the right one. All right, so here we go. So, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. When I first saw the title, I just thought it meant, don't give up in the face of struggle. That seemed like a good guess. Do not go gentle into that good night. Don't give up in the face of struggle. When I look at each individual stanza 1, this stanza is basically saying that old people should not just go quietly into death, but they should go out with a bang. They should, they're not dead yet. And yet is the key word. They're not dead yet. Stanza 2 is about how smart people know that death is inevitable, but because they have not said anything earth-shattering like a thunderbolt, they should not go quietly. So smart people still have one more thing to say, or they should have one more thing to say. Good people wish they could have done more and made more of a difference in the world, so they don't go quietly. There's always one more good thing that they can do. Daring, brave people who have lived life to the fullest, moment by moment, realize too late that time has passed them by, and they don't go quietly, because there's at least one more daring thing that they can do. Serious or grave people, we're going to talk about that word choice in a second. Serious people near death realize that even the blind can be full of light and happiness, so they don't go quietly. And then the 6th stanza is very personal. My last prayer is that you, Dad, for my sake, burden and gift me with your passionate emotions. Don't go quietly, because you are not dead yet. And it's a very interesting stanza there, very different from the other 5, and we're going to discuss that later on. Now, there's a lot of things going on in this poem. The first is the lightness and darkness imagery, known as chiaroscuro, chiaroscuro imagery and symbolism. Chiaroscuro simply means lightness and darkness, and this represents life and death. Light meaning life, darkness meaning death. So we have this imagery and symbolism contrasting life and death. Then there's word choice and diction. Wise men, good men, wild men. This can be bring large ideas such as wisdom, goodness, courage. These are the things we live for: wisdom, goodness, courage. Grave men is serious, but that choice of grave men is a pun. A pun is a play on words. Yes, it means literally serious, but grave meaning they're near death. They're near the grave. Grave men. Blindness versus sight symbolism. Accepting reality versus creating reality. Yes, it's reality. The father is going to die soon. People will eventually die. But what are we going to do about it? That's the key part to this whole thing. There's accepting reality. Death is coming, but creating reality. What are we going to do about it? And here I see the defiant power of the human spirit. In spite of the reality of imminent death, one can still live in the time one has left. Now, not meaning like biologically live, but you like YOLO live. Like you still have time left to live. Yes, we're able to fit the whole poem in the screen. Great. Attitude. The attitude of the poem is definitely grief. You definitely feel the grief of the speaker in this poem, especially in terms of grief for humanity, that we do have people who go quietly into the night, so to speak. But the grief really comes out in that last stanza where this becomes a personal plea to the father. So there's this pleading and appealing of not only to all of humanity, but this personal plea to the father of like, Dad, I know you're suffering right now, but I need you just as much as you're hurting. I'm hurting too. Let's go through this process together. And in there lies hope. I get an attitude of hope in this poem, that in spite of the fact that darkness is coming, we can approach this darkness with light, and we can approach it together, that this can be a shared experience. There's shifts in this poem, stanzas 1 through 5. There's a universality that everyone can relate to. Stanza 6 is a personal appeal to the speaker's father, and yet there's a universality in this appeal as well. Because how many of us have loved ones or have had loved ones who are suffering, and they're suffering alone, and we're saying, we have a relationship together, bring me in. Rage, passion, like your emotions, I can carry them with you. So even though it's a personal appeal of the speaker, there's a universality to it as well. So if I go back to that title, do not go gentle into that good night. I see this now as a personal appeal to not go quietly into death, whether we're talking about the universality of humanity or the personal plea of a close loved one. So slightly different than what I originally thought. Now, themes, I see death and defiance as a major theme in this poem. Old people should defy, and wise, good, wild, and serious men people should defy coming death, because in each of their experiences, they understand the importance of the meaning of every last moment. I also see family grief and old age as another theme here. Sometimes when loved ones are grieving their own mortality or the imminent loss of a loved one, each can remind the other that time is precious. Whatever time is left, the strength of the relationship will dictate the impact of the relationship after death. So that was Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And now I want to transition into When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be.
When I have fears that I may cease to be before my pen has gleaned my teeming bread, before high piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain, when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone, and think, till love and fame to nothingness to sink.
So this brings us into When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be by John Keats, who is my favorite poet of all time. If I had to choose one poet, it would be John Keats. He is my favorite of all time. I'm going to talk about certain things about this poem that need to be known, but let's get into the analysis of it. When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be by John Keats. So when I look at the title, someone writing about their fear of death, and that's what it seems to be off. When I have fears that I may cease to be, okay, it's a fear of death. It's all one stanza, so I'm gonna just give like one conglomerate summary here. The speaker contemplates that one day he or she will die, not having the opportunity to write everything they need to write, or read everything they need to read, or experience all they can from nature, reality, or their imagination, their dreams, or experience and relish in the love of their lover, and they feel isolated, as if standing alone on a vast seashore, and they realize that love and fame mean nothing, or maybe even impossible, in the face of death. There's so much going on in this poem that I could probably spend a whole 45 minutes. So I'm only going to be looking at the first few lines to really talk about what's going on. So if we look at the first two, I'm just going to focus on the first two lines. So enjambment is the splitting of lines to emphasize something. So in these first two lines, when I have fears that I may cease to be before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, they split the idea between cease to be and before my pen. And the first line expresses anxiety over death. And this enjambment, this splitting of the lines into two, further emphasizes this anxiety. And you see it as it goes even further down the line. When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before high-piled books and caricature hold like rich garners of full ripened grain, when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, it's all one sentence. That anxiety is just building and building and building till we get to the shift down here at the hyphen. Then you have word choice and diction. It says cease to be. He doesn't say die. He doesn't say when I have fears that I may die. When I have fears that I may cease to be. It suggests it isn't death itself, but losing the possibilities of that life has to offer after death, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Many people fear death, but they don't really fear death. They fear the fact that one day they're not going to be able to relish in life. And then the whens and befores at the start of many of the lines, you have before, when, it creates a sense of urgency. When the anxieties are, when, meaning the anxieties are regular, I feel this way, I have this fear when this happens, before revolving around dying too soon. So I have these fears because before that I'm gonna die, before I'm able to write what I need to write, before I'm able to read what I can read, being able to experience nature and trace with my imagination the magic hand of chance. Like there's a lot going, there's so much going on in these few lines that it's almost overwhelming, because that's how the speaker feels. The speaker feels overwhelmed by the fact that one day this thing we call life is going to be over, and we're not going to be able to relish in all the things that this life has to offer. There's the metaphor in the second line. Before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. My pen has gleaned my teeming brain likens a pen to a scythe, a tool for harvest and crops, because it goes on of how the teeming brain holds like rich gardeners the full ripened grain. So the pen is like a harvesting tool, a scythe. If you don't know what a scythe is, this is what a scythe is. A scythe is it's an old-fashioned harvester tool to harvest crops. And what happens here is writing is being likened to harvesting the thoughts of the mind. And this is a really complex metaphor because the speaker is the harvester as well as the harvested. And two things are happening. And on top of it, the scythe is the tool, if you ever heard of the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper is the harvester of souls. So that you have all of these happening all at once. Disregard the Grim Reaper giving the middle finger down in the corner. Anyway, so you have all of this happening all at once, where death is definitely like overshadowing this entire poem. But this is a poem about life. This is a poem about, am I going to live? Am I going to take control of the time that I have? Because if I don't take control of that time, if I waste that time away, I'm never going to get it back. Assonance is the repetition of an internal vowel sound. So here we have fear, cease, be. What else do we have? Before, gleaned, teeming. This E, it's like an eerie sound. It's E. With fear being the first use of the vowel sound, fear permeates the poem and is ever present, even when it isn't directly there. So assonance is this repetition of the vowel sound that like goes through this poem and overshadows this poem to emphasize that this anxiety that, oh my God, life is so short and precious. Am I going to be able to do everything that I want to do in this life? Then there's the meter. The opening lines are mostly iambic pentameter. Don't worry about the, what it means. The iambic pentameter is a heartbeat. Da dun da dun da dun da dun. When I have fears that I may cease to be, it's a heartbeat rhythm. And it's 5 perfect I ams. An I am is an unstressed stressed beat of 10 syllables. This suggests that the speaker is able to control their fear of death, and it's written in a sonnet. So what does this suggest? It suggests that yes, this anxiety exists, but I can control it because I can put it into a metered beat and I can put it into a structured sonnet and I can box this anxiety into this one poem. And you know what? This one poem may be the only poem I need to write for my entire life in order for my life to be whole. That's kind of like what it suggests here, but it's also the fact that it's a sonnet. It's a Shakespearean sonnet. It's a nod to Shakespeare. It's a nod to the great poets before him, linking the speaker to the great writers of the past. Because you know what? I have written a poem here that's going to go into the historical record, just like the great poets before me, and I shall live on in my poetry. So I can achieve a certain level of immortality in writing. So when I have fears that I may cease to be, to love and fame to nothingness do sink. But John Keats became famous in death. That's the irony of it. Love and fame live on, but it's part of that anxiety. It's part of that fear that we think that when we die, our love and fame go with us. Sometimes it does. There are many unmarked graves in this world. However, it doesn't always have to be that way. Relationships can go on. Spirits can live on through writing. And that's one of the greatest things that I love about this poem. That yes, it acknowledges the anxiety and fear that life is precious, life is short, there's so much I want to do. And as a human being, I have this knowledge of, oh my God, one day this is all going to be over. I'm not going to be able to do all the great things that this life has to offer. But you know what? I'm going to live one day at a time. I'm going to live moment by moment. I'm going to try to harness this thing called life as much as I can, because that's all I can do. That's all I'm able to work with. The attitude of this poem is fear or anxiety. It's an existential plea for more time. If we could only have more time. The shift happens in line 12 in the hyphen, after listing the fears, especially when considering not being able to experience love. This is the key thing about this whole poem, which brings people to tears, is this part. When I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy. That's Fairy. That's an ancient spelling of the word fairy, Fairy, this magical power of unreflecting love. One of the great things about living this life is experiencing not only what life has to offer, but experiencing other people, loving other people. And because of that, because of loved ones, this poem has to stop. This poem has to stop right here. That's where the hyphen is. Because it's in this moment that it becomes too much. When the fear shifts to isolation and how love and fame seem meaningless in the face of death. Because when we realize that we can't have our loved ones anymore, that's when the realization really hits us the most. So if I'm gonna go back, this is not a poem about the fear of death. This is a poem about why life is short and everything we experience in it is fleeting, and we will never have enough time to do all that we want and need to do. So we need to take advantage of the time that we have. We have to live every moment. That's the urgency of the poem. We have to live every moment that we have. Theme is a fear of death, fleeting experiences of life, writing, reading, nature, and love, isolation. These themes are emphasized by the fact that he wrote this poem at the age of 22. He was healthy. He was not dying. A lot of people think that he was dying when he was writing this poem. He wrote this poem from a point of view of life, knowing that one day, far in the future, hopefully, ages and ages hence, so to speak. But 3 years after he wrote this poem, he contracts tuberculosis and passes away. This poem is so great that a man at 22 years old, a young man, was able to write such a poem that really is timeless and everlasting and has gone through the ages of nearly 200 years. This poem has survived 200 years. Why? Because he gets to the heart of what it means to live and have life and live life to the fullest. This is why these two poems, I love these two poems, because yes, they're poems about death, but they're not about death. These are poems about life. It's poems about the beauty of life and the beauty of living one day at a time. So with this video, I now invite you to analyze the poems that I gave you, that you signed up for. And you could do it similarly as I have. If you want to incorporate video, if you want to incorporate like YouTube, like I did, be creative with it, have fun with it. That's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.